Well, greetings to you. I'm in Athens at the moment. I'm trying to escape the ghastly heat of Yorkshire, which is virtually unbearable, so I've come to Athens where it's just a little bit cooler. But why am I here? Well, not for the sole reason. I've been doing other things, as you know, probably in Istanbul, checking on NATO matters NATO, but that's nothing to do with this. But I did attend a seminar on philosophy. Where else but Athens would one do this? It was very interesting, and it was moderated, as the Americans would say, or the chair was taken by an American whose standard of scholarship was much higher than the average American academics usually is, in my experience, when it comes to matters of this nature, particularly anything to do with Europe. But I'd just like to share this with you because I'd be interested in your view. Everybody watching this, most of my subscribers actually are thinkers. They don't always agree with me, I know that, but they do actually spend some time thinking about things. And he clicked up this slide when he was giving this this lecture, very good lecture, and he said that these are the forms of government that are on option, if you will, and he went through them, not in an order of great priority or precedence. But what was interesting, first one was aristocracy, which of course we would regard here as monarchy. So aristocracy stroke monarchy, democracy, an oligarchy, theocracy, tyranny. And you can tick all the boxes off you like, and you would argue, and I wouldn't really take too much issue with him at about half a dozen of these, of being the factual options that we have for a society to be governed. Now, what is interesting, which nobody actually picks up on academically or philosophically, in my view or in my experience, is that if you look at Athenian democracy, the concept of Athenian democracy, and I have mentioned this before and I apologise for banging the drum again, the whole concept of democracy, which generally speaking is argued or has been argued in the past as being the least awful form of government, the least awful, but Churchill once said that we haven't found anything better. And the trouble is we don't have democracy, we have a sort of mutated, bastardised democracy, not as the original Athenian democrats understood it. The idea was that everybody who contributed to society had a role to play, or a vote, if you will, in how society was governed via that system of democracy, which of course you don't get in the others, tyrannies and theocracies and oligarchies and so on and so forth. The idea was that if you didn't contribute to society, under the Athenian concept of democracy, you didn't get a vote. Pretty straightforward, no need to complicate it really, which I think is quite straightforward in the same way that if you go out for a night on the town with the lads, if you don't put your 20 or 30 quid in the kitty, you don't get a beer. Perfectly straightforward, nobody ever dreams of taking any exception to that. If you go to the AGM, for example, of Marks and Spencer's, you do not get a vote because you buy your knickers or your shirts there. You get a vote only if you are a shareholder, i.e. skin in the game. And that doesn't happen with the other things. And that's why it is, generally speaking, a good idea. But of course, it's been abandoned for fake democracy. It's fake democracy now, where everybody over the age of 18 gets a vote, regardless of whether you put anything into the pot or not, which of course is fundamentally ludicrous. It's ludicrous. What a crazy way of doing it. Imagine if everybody who shopped at Marks and Spencer's and bought their knickers or shirts there got a vote at the AGM. Everybody would vote for free shirts and knickers, wouldn't they? Because that's how it would work out, or something thereabouts. So none of this makes any sense. You have to have skin in the game to get a vote if you're going to have a democratic system. Now, what we have now, I would argue, and this is where I want your input, I would argue that we have this extraordinary situation where it is a mutated, it is corrupted form of democracy with everybody doing it this way, that sooner or later you get some crazy head count and you actually ended up with lunatics running for office or standing for office. You get lunatics, and we would now argue in the West that where we're supposed to have representative democracy, it doesn't represent anybody at all. So you end up with idiots like Starmer and you idiots like Boris Johnson and crazed guys, across the pond. It's not really very good, and it doesn't really work, and which is why we're all in the poo. And the consequences of these things are, ironically, they lead to the other things on the list that this academic put forward. If you have a revolution, say under aristocracy or a monarchy, and it goes to a vote system, of some form of voting system, some form of democracy, then you add up that problem, which soon then goes so badly wrong you end up with an oligarchy. And of course, we all know that big business is something that actually runs modern society. It isn't how you vote. Nobody cares how you vote. You can't change anything. And I did a program with Mike Graham just a few days ago, and he was complaining, quite rightly, dear old Mike, he was complaining quite rightly that people come to office and obviously change, vote for us. It's change. Everybody has come to the ballot box in the last 50 years, I would suggest, in Britain, saying we're going to vote for change. We haven't had any change. We're still waiting for change, and we don't get it. And this is the reason, because there's all sorts of weird reasons for that, sometimes called the Overton window, things you can say, things you can't say. The press, of course, which always follows, broadly speaking, deep state. Broadly speaking, it's supportive of deep state because it depends for its pennies on deep state, and that's what we have with BBC. Nothing original ever comes out of BBC. Legacy media, nothing original comes out of there. So consequently, that goes wrong, and you end up with this oligarchy, and then the oligarchy breeds other things. It could breed, with this really weird situation we have with mass immigration, it could actually breed a theocracy. We could go back to a theocracy because the people coming in come from theocracies, and they think they're a good thing, and they want to bring them here. It makes you wonder why they're escaping from the theocracy that they came from. Why are they escaping from it if they want to change us into a theocracy? But there we are. So that brings into the principles of English law, so on and so forth. So you always go full circle. You have that system, you end up with that system, and therefore you have that system for, and you have that system. You might call fascism an oligarchy because it's banks and the state and big business getting together, and the individual is suppressed. Nobody's interested in the individual. So we have all these standardized forms of government, and it seems to me that the only one that could possibly conceivably work would be democracy if it was as the Athenians intended it to be. So you can't have a vote unless you put something in the pot. And that's something which nobody even seems to talk about. It's not even being talked about. And of course, you add to that, nobody's ever worrying about debt, because that's all part of the system, debt, and debt runs out and the whole system's changed. And you go around in that big circle again. So we do have a problem, and I saw it in a big northern town some years ago when there was a big hoo-ha-ha about whether they should build an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And of course, this was a university town, quite a big university town in the north, a big university town. And of course, everybody gets a vote, including all the students. And of course, all the students think that getting an Olympic-sized swimming pool would be a jolly good idea. So you get this skewed vote. The people who pay for it, i.e. the small businesses who pay business rates, didn't get a vote. The man running it gets a vote, but the guy who's putting the money in the pot doesn't get a vote. So everybody's voting, as Frederick Bastiat would say, and those of you who might be familiar with Frederick Bastiat, who was a French economic philosopher, that everybody wants to live at the expense of his neighbour. And we have this problem, and it's going to get worse and worse until the whole thing implodes. I mean, sometimes these things end up in a civil war, and it wouldn't surprise me if this does. As everybody wanting to live at the expense of his neighbour. We can't all be on welfare. All right? We can't all be on welfare. So somebody actually has to make some money to pay for all the things that we seem to want. Well, you've seen roads and National Health Service and so on and so forth, and pensions, all that kind of thing. Somebody has to create the wealth. And until we actually understand that, we are never going to find a political system that actually works. Tell me what you think.